So what's with this hatred of dragons in Judeo-Christianity, and Christianity in particular after John of Patmos? What's with this hatred of the serpent mysteries? Well, I hope it will be explained in this particular lecture. It is shortened to pure necessities, because dragons are always presiding over the change of eons. Dragons are presiding over imperial status and sagely philosopher status. So, dragon blood, theme of serpentine or draconian genealogy. What is the red dragon symbol in essence? It is a spirit diamond originating from the ancient Sumerian covenants, born from the third transcendent fire through the solar fire corridor, or the sun of the eye of providence, Helios, from the hypersolar Hyperion realities. You may call it the red fiery Vajra in Hindi Buddhist terminology, taking human form in soul and spirit, born of an earthly mother and father, a spirit that is born into a child. You could call him the son of the gods, Aurelion Therion, an old title of Marcus Aurelius of the Sabian house of Ausel, 666, the solar number, which has nothing to do with anything invented by Abrahamic religions, Judeo-Christians, against the many imperial beasts sent from high heaven in both east and west over the centuries. It is utterly hostile to all Judeo-Christian concepts, for Judeo-Christianity was always an enemy of truth with the crucified Jew, enslaving people with lies, destroying the secrets of veritabilities, and selling humanity, accumulating power and wealth through deception. Therefore, the dragon is the natural antichrist to the lies of the Galilean nobody, a zero Jesus, and his ecclesiastical enterprise, who had neither imperial nor heavenly origins nor titles, a beast surpassing the fly master of Galilee, the liar a thousandfold, if you will, the imperial beast of the sun god, is towering above that pathetic crucified Jew, because he is surpassing the liar's religion, if you will, and bestowing the realizations of heaven, yet never claiming the objective truth of the gods, which naturally belong to the gods themselves, separated from it by the assumption of mortal form, as we all do. Seneca. No one believed he was truly born, a proverb referring to a no one. In this case, Claudius. Marcus Valerius Messalia Corvinus, appointed Prefectus Urbi, resigned with a weak ibidem. I am ashamed of my power, even if capable of ruining an empire in the eyes of the gods, who would want to rule over worthless vile idiots who destroy and steal, gaining nothing but transient things. Idiotus, Greek for unwise. Now, don't confuse honesty with truth, or intrigue with lies. People believe anything and are sincere about it. Intelligent people conspire to bring out the wiser and the lost, if they have any ethos or spine at all. As for objective truth, it is inaccessible to mortal minds. There is conventional truth, relative truth, accepted truth, conditioned truth, tradition, scientific fact, empirical truth. This is complicated in theology, metaphysics, magic, occult, and philosophy. We all have our inner truths, or elaborate networks of realizations, wisdom, experiences, preserving moments of brilliant clarity, observations, and certainties that we must cultivate to sustain our reality apparatus, belief system, and so on. Without them, our inner world would crumble. Our realization, when it is an illusion, is a cognitive bias that becomes like honesty about one's own bullshit. We believe it but have achieved nothing. We consider our beliefs true, even die-hard believers, but to others they are false. Ask, investigate, be skeptical, experience. Moments come and go. Keep what is wise, beautiful, noble, and useful. Discern and reject nonsense. Dragons have haunted and inspired the human imagination for millennia. They appear in myths from every corner of the world, sometimes as harbingers of destruction, sometimes as guardians of wisdom, and sometimes as divine ancestors, heavenly. Understanding dragons is a window into humanity's deepest fears and highest aspirations. In the ancient Mediterranean world, dragons often straddled the line between history and myth as serpents. One tale about Olympias, queen of Macedon and mother of Alexander the Great, claimed that the dragon, sometimes identified with god Zeus Meilichios perhaps, impregnated her, granting Alexander divine ancestry. Therefore, Alexander of Macedon was a dragon, or an office. Such legends reflect a broader theme. Rulers legitimize their power through blood ties to supernatural beings, often serpentine or dragon-like. The oldest known dragon-like creatures appear in Mesopotamia, hence the Sumerian covenant. The Sumerians spoke of the Mushushu, a dragon serpent associated with god Marduk, the protector of cosmic order. Similarly, in Babylonian myth, Marduk slays the chaos dragon Tiamat and creates the universe from her body. In Egyptian tradition, snakes were depicted as cosmic forces, like Agathos Daimones and other friendly, benevolent demigods, the giant serpent Apophis that battled the sun god Ra every night, threatening the renewal of the world. These myths portray dragons and snakes as embodiments of chaos, constantly opposing the forces of order, but also embodiment of order themselves. The roots of fear. Why do dragons appear in so many traditions? Anthropologists suggest the answer lies deep in our evolutionary past. Humans possess an instinctive fear of snakes and large reptiles, a trait that may have enhanced our ancestors' chances of survival. Fossils of giant prehistoric creatures, the dinosaurs, discovered long before the rise of paleontology, may also have inspired dragon myths. In this sense, dragons embody the memory of ancient threats, dinosaurs, reptiles, predators, transformed into symbols of mystery and power. Past Earths and reincarnation of life waves on Earth, perhaps through continuous respiritualizations. Dragon of the East. In China, dragon depicts that date back almost 5,000 years. Neolithic jade ornaments depicts the dragon's sinuous forms. Unlike the fire-breathing monsters of the West, Chinese dragons are benevolent, associated with rain, godly power, rivers, and fertility. They symbolize power, prosperity, and immortality. In Indian mythology, serpents, dragons, appear as nagas, serpentine creatures that can be both benevolent and menacing, inhabiting the heavens, rivers, and underworlds. One such example may be Nagarjuna, a philosopher that was considered a dracon or a naga. Dragons of Greece and Rome. There were masters of dragons such as Apollo or Athena or Heracles. Heracles vanquished the Hydra, whose growing heads made it nearly invincible. Jason had to face the dragon god in the Golden Fleece, Medea, and the dragon of Colchis, the Serpent of Colchis. The Romans adopted much of this symbolism, but also developed the image of snakes as protective beings, just like the Greeks. Serpents were representing holy hidden men. The god of healing Asclepius Dracon was associated to a serpent entwined staff, a symbol that still stands for medicine today. Even in classical worlds, dragons and snakes could be both menacing and protective. Biblical tradition transformed the dragon into an unequivocally malevolent figure. Early Hebrew texts mentioned chaos monsters such as Leviathan and Rahab. In Greek and Latin translations, these creatures were often referred to as dracons or dracon by mistranslation or lack of a better word. In the Book of Revelation by John of Patmos, that fanatic, the dragon was already portrayed as the embodiment of ultimate evil, a seven-headed beast warring against God and his angel. The seven-headedness meant the mastery of the planets from the luminaries up to Saturn. Therefore, a master or a maestra that wore the seven crowns of the planets and attuned properly in correlation to each nature of the planet in order to command himself, the world, and be liberated. While other cultures saw dragons as complex and ambivalent creatures, Christianity made them a symbol of Jewish God's demonic adversary, an image that shaped the Western imagination for centuries. Now, what is up with the serpent traditions, the ophitic snakes, the old Greco-Roman traditions, the Kemetic traditions, the Kundalini traditions, Ophitotronics? Particularly intriguing in esoteric tradition is the doctrine of Ophitotronics, the belief in the power of the serpent as a conduit for human transformation. In this view, the serpent symbolizes not only chaos or fertility, but also functions as a magical spiritual technology. Ophitotronics is based on what some alchemists have called ecogenetic reenactment, a mystical return through the branches of evolution where the path of the serpent unfolds into the air element or the bird. Symbolically, this process gives wings to the soul, granting the capacity for flight and transcendence. Ancient Mesopotamian traditions preserve traces of this practice through the invocation of dragon gods, such as Nun-Galmesh, beings believed to oversee the ascension of the human spirit, the princes of the stars. The method is based on the alchemical formula vitriol, visita interiora terra rectificando invenies occultem lapidem, in other words, submersion of your soul and bathing your spirit in the abyss, or the Tartarus. In this context, the formula becomes a spiritual exploration of the human interior and a true experience that elevates the spirit to the rank of a demigod. A central element of Ophitotronics is the construction of a mesh tree, or a tree of life, around the adept, reminiscent of the Sumerian tree of life. No, not the Jewish Kabbalah tree of life. That was a 10th century Spain rewrapping of the Judeo-Arabic trafficking. The Arabs secured the knowledge, the Jews rewrapped it in Judaism and vulgarized it, spoiling it. This tree symbolizes both the branching of existence and the structure of kingship based on the 7 Chaldean planets. To sit within its amidst, means to be transformed into a new deity. The mortal is elevated to the ranks of the gods posthumously, endowed with wings and immortalized. In essence, the sword that barred the path to paradise, the Edin Heimat, is a sword that barred the path only to the traitors of Babylon, that is, Jews. This arcane art reveals how dragon symbolism transcended myth to become an initiatory practice, offering not only tales of monsters or ancestors, but also a vision of the path of transformation. 2 visions of the dragon. In the West, or the Judeo-Christian West, dragons are hybrid monsters, often destructive, slaying. In the East, dragons are celestial beings, symbols of wisdom, reign and immortality, rarely malevolent. Despite their differences, both traditions reflect human amazement at the unknown and menacing at the divine. Esoteric practices such as Ophitotronics remind us that dragons is not only an external creature, but also an internal guide. The motif of serpentine or Draconian genealogy is deeply rooted in ancient traditions. Aulus Gellius in the Attic Nights recounts the story of Scipio Africanus' supposed divine origins, claiming that his mother was visited by a serpent in a dream, and thus Scipio Africanus, the conqueror of Carthage, was also a dracon. This echoes the myth of Olympia's mother of Alexander the Great, who was impregnated by Zeus Ammon or Melikios in the form of a serpent. Narratives point to an older Indo-European and Near Eastern tradition in which serpents, dragons or draconian beings were considered divine ancestors, both literally and symbolically. Ancient draconian lineage patterns developed into 2 basic ways: co-fertilization by possession, or starting a new line, when a deity, often in serpentine form, intervenes spiritually or metaphysically in conception, creating offspring endowed with divine or supernatural qualities. Preservation of bloodlines, when a family bears the hallmarks of draconian origin, sustained by royal or sacral succession, ensuring the continuity of the dragon blood. This dual mode of transmission appears in many lineages associated with authority and spiritual power, from the Chinese dragon kings to the Merovingians and European nobility who claim descent from supernatural serpentine beings. The systematic destruction of matrilineal priestly lines in the Draconian legacy fits into a broader historical pattern of Judeo-Christian expansionism, which suppressed earlier sacred tradition, replacing it with their lies. Attacking serpent and dragon bloodlines through demonization, forced conversion, and historical manipulation was intended to eliminate alternative sources of the divine legitimacy to kinghood and emperorhood that might have threatened the monopoly of the Abrahamic shit priesthoods. Draconian lineages in Indo-European, Middle Eastern, and Far Eastern traditions alike often represented sovereign or liminal authority, combining divine and earthly power. Traditions of priestesses passed down through the maternal lineage constituted a distinct model of spiritual inheritance difficult to incorporate into patriarchal Abrahamic structures. The systematic destruction of these systems, from the suppression of oracles, for example Pythonesses at Delphi, the stigmatization of serpent-related figures as demonic, Lilith, Leviathan, the Serpent of Eden, bespeak an attempt to erase an entire mode of spiritual existence. The destruction of these traditions was not merely a theological matter, it had a profound political dimension. The Draconian legacy, bearing divine sanction through possession or blood, directly challenged the Abrahamic priesthood's claims to exclusive legitimacy over their cowardly slaves. By eliminating these traditions, Judeo-Christian rulers and clergy created an artificial monopoly of spiritual authority with no claims of divinity, imposing a controlled and purified version of divine origin to their liking. Historical examples include the Christianization of Mother Europe, the dissolution of heathen kingdoms, the elimination of matrilineal priestly families, and the demonization of serpentine bloodlines. Figures such as Charlemagne waging war against pagan rulers and the forced Christianization of Scandinavian Slavic nobility illustrate the process. Original royal lines were sacral in nature. The ruler served as a bridge between gods and humans, heavens of the stars and mortals, while Christian rulers became mere administrative figureheads dependent on the church, with no claim of divinity, no links to heavens, thereby severing and destroying the metaphysical power of government on earth. The deliberate assault on true sovereignty was clear. Judeo-Christian expansion systematically undermined the authority of legitimate Draconian rulers descended from divine lineages, replacing them with church-controlled puppets and creating an artificial hierarchy serving ideological and political domination rather than true divine legitimacy, and building fake architectures in the West, metaphysical, hiring liars, slaves, and fake angels. So, as to the seven-headed beast, the seven-headed beasts of God and the great whore, or Vir Unus, man, dragon, and woman Artemis Hecate, completed, proresis. A busy bee has no time for regrets and despair. Proverbs of William Blake. I will invite you to read it. I will not go through all of it. However, it is about the absorption of planetary natures of these spheres, of the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, the triregnum of Earth, Jupiter up to Saturn, and perhaps we can go further. The Chaldean order ends on Saturn, but we can speculate on eight-head Uranus, Neptune, and so on, as you please. So, thank you. I hope that clarified a lot of things, if you still wonder.